and have looked to set up. Oh, recording's going, and look to set up the alumni webinars, because it's a chance then to re-engage with many of you. It's a chance for you to stay engaged, obviously, with the university. So I'm really pleased today that to welcome Jorge. I'm not sure if Jorge was on the FiMBA with any of you that are currently here today, but Jorge was studying. I think, was it 2012 you finished, Jorge?
15.
2015. So, and since then, he's had an interesting career, and one of the roles that he was involved with was as Director of International Strategy at the Spanish Football Federation. So that's the nature of Jorge's talk today. He's going to talk about his role in the successful bid for the 2030 World Cup, which is obviously going to be held in Spain, Morocco, and Portugal. He's going to talk for about 25, 30 minutes, and then there's plenty of time for questions after this. So thank you ever so much, Jorge, for being the first in the alumni to put themselves forward to do a webinar, and the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Geoff. I will minimize here so I can see the presentation a bit better. Hello, everybody. I'm not really sure who is in, but we'll have time for that later in the questions. But first, I wanted to thank you, Geoff, and Chris for this opportunity. And I think that what you guys have in mind is brilliant for all of us, the alumni and the current students, that we can share our experiences and discuss, engage with other alumni. So without further ado, I'm going to talk to you about how we became the only bid for 2030 World Cup. I've prepared some slides, but I will be telling a little bit the story and what happened. And then we have questions for sure in the end. If anybody wants to interrupt at any moment, feel free to do so. This project began from my side, as you can see here. I became the Spanish Football Association Director of Strategy and International Relations in 2018 until 2024. And once there was a constituted committee, I was one of the executive members from 22 to 2024. Now, if this moves forward, which I don't know why it doesn't, just give me a second. Oh, there you go. So here is where the story began, actually. It did in a possibly very unexpected place, which was Russia 2018. For a bit of context, Luis Rubiales, president of the Spanish FA at that time, was elected in May, and the World Cup began in June, just a month after he was elected. In the group stage of Russia, the three countries that ended up being co-organizers of the bid were in the same group stage. So the odds of that are not very high, but there you have. That's why, as you will hear in the next minutes, I'd like to highlight this sentence, because it really was a sequence of coincidences, how all this project began. At the macro level, I mentioned these group stages of the World Cup, where the three federations met and the three presidents met. The second big element, and was another coincidence, was that the Spanish Super Cup, as you can see here in 2018, was played in Tangier. And it's a coincidence because it was not really expected to happen. Before that game, the Super Cup was played home and away in August. And I'm not really sure what were the reasons behind it, but it just was not possible to host those two games as per normal. So the federation came up with this solution of organizing a one game in Tangier. At that time, one of the reasonings was that there were no neutral venues in Spain that could host it, big enough, Madrid, Valencia. So during the World Cup, Rubiales and Mr. Fousilexia from Morocco agreed to organize this game in Morocco. And this game was, of course, played by two of our big teams. And on top of Moroccan Federation, there was representation from Portugal. So Russia 2018 and Tangier were where everything began, really. One of the things we are going to talk about during this session, it's about how things evolved. And you are not going to see a straight road. This was a roller coaster, but also like a really crazy curving road, let's say. Nevertheless, and at the end of these 6 years, we reached to Zurich, I say here, but it possibly would be more accurate, to a virtual FIFA Congress in December 2024, where we got the full and unanimous support of the FIFA Congress. Now, during these 6 years, a lot of things happened. Again, this I'm going to talk about macro and the main elements, but there were a few others. To combine these macro elements with my participation in this project is that as I said, Rubiales won the presidency in May 2018. I was appointed director of the Spanish FA during the beginning of the World Cup. So I arrived to my position, and the first decision that the federation took at that time was to sack the coach 2 days before the opening game. So as you can imagine, the landing was interesting, to say the least. So with this 2018 spark, we started having more internal discussions on the way forward. And from my FIFA days, and I will explain that again in a minute, for me it was very, very obvious that 2030 was a big opportunity for the rotation policy that FIFA had at that time. So we targeted the 2030 bid from the very beginning. The initial announcement, it didn't have Morocco in. At that time, there were not official bids, but the federations that had announced the willingness to bid for the World Cup were the home nations on Ireland and CONMEBOL, Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, and Chile for the 100th of the centenary of the World Cup. That was the scenario in 2019. There were many rumors, some East European bids, Saudi, Egypt, Greece. There were many rumors, but in 2019, this was the scenario. Meaning that from our side, the first element was to ensure that we would get the support from UEFA. Without the support from UEFA battling the home nations in Ireland, the process would not make a lot of sense. So that's why in the first moment in 2019, we announced already that Spain and Portugal would be conducting a thorough analysis on the possibility of organizing a joint bid. This initial assessment got materialized in 2020. We played a friendly game that year in Portugal where we signed a formal cooperation, and we agreed that we were going to pursue this objective. 2021, one of the key elements happened, which was that the home nations, after conducting their own feasibility study, they realized or concluded that it was more beneficial or optimal for them to run for the 2028 Euros than to the 2030 World Cup. And that led in 2022 to the official endorsement of the UEFA president of our bid. UEFA president and, as a consequence, European federations, 55 except Portugal, that's 53 other federations. The next key element took place in 2023 during the FIFA Congress in Kigali, where Morocco, after a few months of discussions, joined the bid and became a part of the bid. And this changed the dynamics. We moved from an Iberian European bid to a multi-continental bid. In fact, the first ever multi-continental bid for a World Cup. There is the case of New Zealand and Australia 2023. That there are two different confederations, but at the end, two Oceanian countries. So this is the first proper multi-continental, or it was the first multi-continental bid. And all this led to December 2024, when we received at that time the highest ever score, 4.2 out of 5, which the Saudi bid equaled as well, 4.2, and the unanimous designation. There is one element that I highlighted here that, following on what I said at the beginning, it was another coincidence. I'm not sure if any of you remember this, possibly yes, it was a bit thin. In 2018, the Copa Libertadores was not able to be played in Argentina, River Boca, and CONMEBOL requested our assistance to organize the game in Madrid. We managed to do that between 10 and 14 days, it was, since we got the proposal from CONMEBOL till the game was played. So it was record time. And if any of you was there, I'm sure you remembered how the security measures were, the atmosphere was. It really was a world-class event, and that cemented our the confidence we had on our projects, and also the image that we had as a federation worldwide. How we actually structured the bid. Until 2022, there was no structured way. There was no formal committee between Spain and Portugal. There was no formal committee, no meetings, nothing like this. It was more a low profile discussions between the Portuguese president, Fran Gomes, our president, Luis Rubiales, and from the very beginning, we agreed that we would be leading on all the institutional and political strategy part of the bid. We were more active in that sphere, and we dedicated a lot of time to travel around the world, to visit federations, confederations, etc., etc., etc. So from the very beginning, it was clear that we would be leading that political institutional role. And at the same time, Portugal was agreed that they would contribute to the more technical and operational aspects of the dossier. This materialized in 2022 when we created the committee for the bid with 3 members of Portugal, 3 members of Spain. I was one of the members in Spain. And we put down to paper these concepts or the principles that we had agreed on. We even discussed to have 2 headquarters, Portugal for all the operational matters, and Madrid for the visits, the meetings, etc. From our side, it was key, and that's how we worked on this project, to be seen constantly in as many places as we could. Of course, all UEFA-related meetings, but on top of that, in other confederations and member associations important meetings. In 2023, when Morocco became part of the bid, and we incorporated them with all the 3 members in the committee, they became with a lot of energy, a lot of knowledge, a lot of drive, as I say here. And they supported in both elements, institutional and operational one. In terms of the institutional one, obviously they are one of the power horses in African football, so they did have a lot of support and a lot of federations that were willing to go follow them in the project, but also Middle East, etc. So their involvement was key from the institutional element, but again, also from the operational one. They bid 5 times before 2030. The last one was in 2026, when despite challenging the powerful Mexico, US, and Canada bid, they were not that far away in terms of voting. US, I think it got 130-ish. They got 70-ish as well. So it was not that far away. So they had already done this work of the dossier and all these aspects. And all this, when Morocco came into the picture, coincided a few months later with the Sydney case, Sydney affair, Sydney, whatever you want to call it, where Spanish president kissed one of the players, and it became a global scandal. Again, we'll touch upon that in a second. All that happened, that scandal from August 23 until the consequences were until December 24. So one of the key aspects why it did not affect the bid as hard as it could was because we had created this architecture with very, very strong and solid foundations. And despite what was happening at the Spanish FA level, we managed to isolate the bid topics and as much as possible to put them outside of the day-to-day discussions and Game of Thrones, etc. of the federation. When we started this project, there were 2 objectives that we set from the very beginning. This is January 2022 when we had the first meeting. We wanted to exceed the 4.0 out of 5 that the US, Mexico, Canada received, which was surpassed by Australia and New Zealand by 4.1 in their bid, despite having other technical requirements. But 4.0 was the target originally, and increase the number of votes and support that US, Mexico, Canada had in that FIFA Congress in Russia as well. This sentence here, it's certainly not saying this was another fundamental element of our bid and why it was successful despite everything that happened, especially in Spain. There was a tendency in the different countries between different people of seeing this bid as, it's the Spanish bid with Morocco, Portugal, which in a way it definitely was, but a lot of people wanted to see it as 3 bids combined. From our perspective, that was never the case. We had very clearly that it had to be 1 bid supported by the different countries for sure, but 1 bid. So it was not the Morocco bid, it was not Portugal, it was not Spain, it was our combined bid. And this that maybe or might not sound so important, I can guarantee you, and in the toughest times when we had no presidents, the police came to the headquarters and all these things that happened, it helped us to keep the bid and the role we had in it side of everything else that was happening. Now, this quote or this winning without asking for votes might sound a bit clickbait, but I can guarantee you that at least from my side, it's legit. I never asked for a vote from anybody. We wanted to approach this project in a different way. We don't have the pockets of other big countries, obviously. At that time, actually, when we began in 2019, our big concern was China before COVID. I'm sure a lot of you remember how prominent China was. They were organizing, I think, that year, the Basketball World Cup. And the rumors were that China wanted to secure the 2030 World Cup. Now, for us, there were 2 key elements that we wanted to ensure, which was the first 2, to ensure that the FIFA rotation policy of 2 previous editions was maintained and UEFA's backing. Why? Obviously, the FIFA rotation policy sustained that for 2030, no AFC member or CONCACAF member could bid because it prohibited associations that had hosted it in the previous 2 editions. Why was so important? Well, CONCACAF, obviously, they were not going to running again as being in 26, but with 22, you could always have questions because this is not in the statutes. FIFA statutes only mention 1 edition of rotation, but it's a council decision, so it's a policy, not a regulations per se. So we wanted to ensure that that was going to happen from the very beginning. And again, this was targeting China at that time. Then there were other rivals a few years down the line. But at that time, that was the view we had. And the second element is the UEFA's backing. The context that I mentioned, it was the home nations and Ireland were interested in this project as well. And there was no point or we're not very favorable of having competition in Europe for voting, lobbying, etc. for this project. So what we did from the very beginning, and this is why I include this element here, is we portrayed the image and the idea that this World Cup was the right place and the right time to do it. We had not organized it since 1982, and it's the only big event that we've organized since then in football, not even youth categories or anything like that, national level, of course. And we had to really identify what our strengths were. And as I said, maybe not have big pockets, but we do have the history, we do have the fancy and historic and sexy stadiums and training grounds, etc. And when you think of football, of course, there are always big countries there, and Spain is always up there. And of course, spending June, July, a few weeks in Spain, it's always a very good idea and very positively taken. So the way we operated was that we visited, and particularly I visited or I created many relationships at confederation level originally. We always thought or knew that at the end, member associations tend to follow what confederations do. So we engage very, very strongly and genuinely, which is a keyword in my view, with these confederations in terms of attending their congresses, attending their finals, etc., 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 and always open to discussions of any topic with the confederations, but also with member associations from those areas. One of the key elements at that time, without knowing, was when we decided to organize the Super Cup in Saudi. We didn't have many contacts by then in the region, and by organizing the Super Cup there, Saudi opened us the door for many contacts in the region. We took the chance every time we organized the games there to invite by the Saudis federations from all around the world. They would come, especially from Asia. They would come to the games, and we would have the time to speak with them, chat with them, etc. But as I say here, it was never, hey, I would like your vote. We explained what we had in mind, and it's not that we took for granted the support, but we say, we'd love to see you there. So that's why technically they were never asking for votes. At the end, there's nothing we could offer apart from what I said before. And then the fourth key element that we had to face at the end, or at the middle actually of this process, was the Sydney incident. This happened late August 2023, and we knew that FIFA was about to publish the regulations for bidding for 2030. They had to come soon. We were always planning with the 2026 regulations to gain time, and there was not much time. FIFA was already 2 years late from when they used to release these documents, so we knew it was imminent. Fernando Gomes and Fouchilegia were members of the FIFA Council, so of course we knew that it was going to come soon. So this incident happened, and it was very dramatic in a way, because this created a tsunami in Spanish football and Spanish Federation. Unprecedented. I've never experienced anything like this, even in my FIFA days when I visited a lot of federations that were going through governance issues. Never I've seen something like this. And there was this idea very quickly to kill Rubiales and everything that was related to him. And we had to see how we manage this from a bid perspective. No, I mean, FIFA suspended him a few days after the incident, I think even the next week. So by early September, he was suspended. And now we had to see how to deal with this. And it was not easy to find the right balance between acknowledging what had happened and share our concerns with other federations. At the end of the day, one of the big issues that remained was that this World Cup was remembered, and possibly even today, for that incident and not for how we played and how we won. But again, this not only affected us. We played with England. It was in Australia with New Zealand organizing. UEFA, Second Federation was involved, FIFA as well. So we decided to have a proactive approach by which we spoke with all the federations first. We told them that we condemned what happened. We did not see fit for purpose. We also ensured, clear that this was incident of the president of the federation, not the federation matter. So we tried to keep that balance, between explaining how this did not came from the administration or whatever. It was just a personal incident, without throwing him under the bus more than he was already. And I think we managed to do that quite well. And at the end, a few weeks later, on the 4th of October, FIFA announced the regulations for 2030 and 2034. And there was a particularity, which was that for the first time ever, to my knowledge, at least in modern history, FIFA for 2030 did not open it to federations to bid. FIFA is the one that designated that the 2030 bid would be, or they invited Spain, Portugal, and Morocco to bid, plus the 3 South American countries for 3 celebration games. But they directly stated Spain, Portugal, Morocco. For 2034, for instance, they did the usual approach, which is they invited AFC and OFC members, if I'm not mistaken. So anybody could have bid. They only received one bid, which was Saudi, but everybody could have bid technically. Here, I think this was one of the key principles that we had and really helped us again in this project with all the big pockets that I mentioned, because we did really take care of how we behaved internationally, how we approached not confederations only, but especially federations and the way they saw us. This was specifically, it came from the president. Rubiales came from a humble club. He played second division most of his career, sometimes in first division. Then he was union president. So he gave instructions to all the administration, and we took them 100%, that we had to treat the same if we speak with Germany, if we speak with Andorra. Of course, the discussions are different, but our behavior had to be the same. And this is something that I believe we managed to do very well. And this is one of the reasons why, without needing to ask for votes, we were in the conversation, and it was kind of accepted that we were going to be the 2030 organizers or hosts of the World Cup. Now, this is the outcome after all the year from the 4th of October, when FIFA released the conditions for bidding, until December, when we got the 4.2 in the middle. And if some of you has been involved in bidding, you will this will resonate. One of the main difficulties we had, paradoxically, was that when you are multiple bids and you need to go to your stadiums to ask for the stadium agreements, in the FIFA case, they are pretty strong. They normally ask for around a month of the stadium for them, not just free of charge, which for sure, but also free of any logos, branding, no operations in the stadium, blah, blah, blah. Now, when you are competing with another bid, I could go to Real Madrid, Barcelona's, and say, hey guys, if you don't sign this for me, this is going to impact my technical score, and it might cause difficulties with another bid, which is what I believe happened a little bit in the 26 US, Mexico, Canada bid. Now, the fact that we were the sole bid, it was great for a lot of things. This was a bit of a problem, because particularly in Spain and the Portuguese stadiums, they knew the 3 Portuguese, and Madrid, Barcelona, Athletic Bilbao, and Atletico Madrid, that their stadiums were going to be part of the bid. It's very hard to imagine a bid without those stadiums. So the discussions were not straightforward, and it was quite the opposite. It was more like, well, yeah, sure, I'd like to be part of this, but no chance in signing that. So during the last part of the bidding process, which finished in July 2024, this was the biggest, or one of the biggest concerns. It was okay with this national government guarantees, the other stadiums that they were competing against each other to see in Spain, which were going to be part of the bid, except this big 4, that was fine. But this big 4 was complex, let's say. But well, nevertheless, we managed to reach some common ground with FIFA, which is what led to this 4.2 out of 5 technical valuation. That led to the unanimous support on the virtual Congress. Now, there are a few highlights that I wanted to share with you from my experience that I don't know if any of you then wants to comment or see if you've been in a similar place, or if you are going to be in a similar place. This is the first one. Of course, it's different if you work for a big pocket federation country that if you don't. In my case, I didn't. So we did things a bit different. We didn't have the financial muscle to get support. We had to do it through a different and alternative approach. The alliances was a fantastic aspect of this bid, but it was complex. We always say that football unites us. It does. Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, big time. One of possibly 3 of the football maddest countries in the planet. but we have a lot of differences in every way, politically, economically, demographically, in many ways. It's very different, the three countries. And it was great to see how you could, with football, it's said many times, well, football has the power to unite, blah, blah, blah. Well, it actually does have it. And when we managed to see the big picture and the joint bid and how it was a combined bid and not three individual bids, that end up with a very powerful vision and a narrative that is very, very hard to match. I want to insist on the reputation because that's what we had. And I gave the example of Luis. I could give you more if you want later, but that was a central aspect throughout all this time. And then this project as a conclusion, it definitely was more than a bid. We were in the three countries constantly. We managed to understand the difficulties we had. In most cases, it was us, but Portuguese faced difficulties as well. Moroccans faced difficulties as well. And then after all this year and all these grounds that I talk about and the relationships that we built between the three of us, it really helped all of us in ensuring that the bid would be successful despite everything that was going on outside. Now, I want to finish with a couple of pictures for you to have an idea of how many we were, because it was not many. Here I'm with my colleague Fernando Sanz. I'm sure a lot of you know him. He was a Real Madrid player. His dad was the president of Madrid when they won, the Champions League, the seventh and the eighth. Then became Malaga captain, owner of Malaga, La Liga employee, and he was my colleague in the executive committee. And this was my team, our team, but not all of us were our team. This lady and this gentleman are from FIFA. This gentleman is from Morocco, and this gentleman is from Portugal. We created a concept as it was a virtual ceremony to have one representative of each country in the respective one to create that concept again of all together. It's not in the picture, but here we had the Portuguese and the Moroccan flag as well. So these were the guys from my team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are a couple more that were not in the picture. There was not many more people than that for you to bear in mind how we managed to conduct this project. So with that being said, I open the floor to comments, discussions, whatever you see fit.
Thank you ever so much, Jorge. Really, really appreciate that. Really, really fascinating talk about your experiences, obviously bidding for the World Cup. I've got questions or things I want to follow up with you on, but rather than do that, I will throw the floor open to our colleagues in the room at the moment. Does anybody want to come in? If you do, just stick your hand up, and I think I should be able to see, or just jump in and ask a question. Feel free to do that. And I also have some questions that somebody emailed me prior to this as well, which I'm happy to ask. But does anybody want to come in with the first question for Jorge?
There is one in the chat. Let me see.
Here we are. Let's have a look. Yes. So I can read this out. So this is one from LA. Says you mentioned that strong relationships are crucial for the success of this kind of process. What are some less obvious thinking frameworks for building strong relationships? And also in hindsight, what would you have done differently?
Sorry, Juan, can you rephrase it? Because I'm not really sure what you mean.
Yeah, Jorge, nice to meet you. Great talk. So I'm curious, developing relationships, and it's great when you're talking about like how it was key to you guys, like winning and achieving the goal, just having these strong relationships. And I'm curious about the dynamic of those relationships, right? Like, because in that relationship, you have attributes about people wanting things and then people just building also commonality across them. So what are non-obvious things that you kind of learn across multiple relationships that you had to build across that you would say are interesting to take away from us?
Okay. Well, they were not only, I mean, they were essential, So as I told you, we were organizing this committee of three per federation. In reality, I was leading from the Spanish side. There was another gentleman leading from the Portuguese, another one leading from the Morocco side. The one from the Morocco side, the guy that led all the process from there, I met him in 2018 in the Tangier Super Cup. And this would be more for the pub with some beers to tell you those stories. But I can tell you that I had to jump in a visit to Tangier because my colleagues from the Spanish FA and Morocco FA, none of them spoke English and they communicated in English between them. So the outcome was that the Spanish FA had sold, or the clubs were selling tickets in one side of the stadiums. And when we were there, Moroccans had printed them in another side and with another price. So it was chaotic. You could not imagine and I was just new there. So when everything seemed impossible to solve, a gentleman called Moad jumped in. He was trusted advisor of the president, and he gave us solutions. And that guy that gave us solutions that day, he was very helpful until the end of the Super Cup with many aspects. And then he became the leader of the project from Morocco's side. So I had a relationship with him from 2018 from something completely different. We nurtured that relationship because we did really connect. And then he was the leader in Portugal, in Morocco. With Portugal, it was a bit similar. The leader was a more experienced, older person than me. And we spoke clearly from the beginning about who does what. Super organized, structured guy, but not many social skills. So he would not jump in my business. I would not jump in his business. And that worked very well. And at the end, we saw that everybody added value to the equation. So there was no blah, blah, no cha-cha, right? So when the problems came and my president, and Rubiales was suspended, I spoke with these two guys, Jorge, don't worry, we have your back. When the police came in the headquarters of the Spanish FA in March 24, we were in Lisbon, we were in a meeting ourselves, live, Portugal and Morocco ourselves, with FIFA. And we were receiving messages that the police was in the headquarters. So imagine those situations. Without these relationships, I don't see how, or for me, it's very hard to see how project can survive without that.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Can I just pick up on that? Because Jorge, you mentioned quite a bit about the importance of relationships throughout, and the relationships you've tended to touch on are the ones within football. So relationships with UEFA, the importance of getting UEFA's backing for this, relationships across European national associations, so that nobody was bidding against you, for example. Relationships, as you said, with FIFA, and then obviously what's key to this has been the relationship between Morocco, Spain, and Portugal as well. But what about more widely outside of football? So for example, thinking about the relationships between the FAs and governments, and then the relationships with the people in the countries, because we know for a lot of events like the Olympics now, many countries host referendums and ask the population, do you want to host the Olympics, for example. We've seen this in Norway with the Winter Olympics a good number of years ago, and the Norwegian population, so they voted against that. They're like, we don't want to host the Olympics. So giving people a vote. Was there anything, what happened in the context of this bid and the wider political relationships, but also then, relationships with the wider population? Because that's something obviously that's key to bids, isn't it? Is getting public support for these.
Sure. Sure. I mean, as it was just 30 minutes, I focused on the football, but on the committee that I mentioned, we had 3 representatives per federation. There were 2 more from each government. So we had the right hand of the Minister of Sports that became the Minister of Sports during the process. And we had the Chief of Staff of the Minister of Sports. So they were involved from the beginning. And the 3 countries, we had the same. Without that, in our case, we would not have been able to do this project as well. Not just for the things you mentioned. In our case, we are a special country, I guess, like all are. But in our case, football is beyond any other discussion. So there was never question how much is going to cost the stadiums. Is it going to be built instead of hospitals? No discussions. Also, it's true that we were quite prepared. So the stadiums that needed to be redone were doing that already, Bernabeu or Camp Nou, not for the World Cup, for their own business. And there were just 2 or 3 that needed to be redone for the World Cup. So in our case, it was more to help us navigate with the politics in Spain. Because in Spain, we have the central government, then we have 17 regional governments. Each government from the region, it has provinces, and each province has a president, and then each municipality, a mayor. So, and most of the stadiums are owned by the public. And it happens, for example, in Sevilla, that the stadium is owned by the municipality, the region, and the province, the 3 of them. In many cases, from 3 different parties. And in Spain, the current political climate is total, close to civil war. So without the assistance and the participation of the government in this group, it would have been impossible. I didn't say this, but in 2023, in May, so while we were in the middle of this process, there were municipality elections in all the country and national elections then in July. So on top of everything I said, we had some discussions advanced with all the stadiums, political, blah, and then there were these elections to make things even more interesting and more fun.
Great, thank you. Does anybody got a question?
Hi, yes, I would like to ask a question. Hi, Jorge. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was great, great insights, the ones that you gave us here. And my question is, how do you balance the relevance or the weight of each host country in a multinational World Cup bid? Like, I know that you said that there's 1 representative per country, but yeah, like how do you manage that balance between Spain, Portugal, and Morocco?
Spot on. I'll tell you how it finished, and then I'll go to the beginning. At the end, what people liked and what the big discussion was always the stadiums, the games, and the quality of the games. So in terms of stadiums, we presented 20 to FIFA, 11 from Spain, 6 from Morocco, 3 from Portugal. We presented 3 options for the final: Bernabeu, Camp Nou, Casablanca, and the same 3 options from the opening. And then it scales down. But this is the most interesting part. Now, when we began this project with Portugal, it was quite straightforward because we have correlation of 25% Portugal, 75% Spain in almost everything. Population, in most of the ratios, the balance is 1 Portugal, 3 Spain. So the number of 11 Spain and 3 Portugal came from the very beginning. It was a number that we were comfortable with to present 14 stadiums and had 3 and 11. And the capacity minimum for finals and openings is 80,000 plus. So Spain would have the opening and the final. We both would have a semi-final each, etc. So when we was just the 2 of us, and my president was still in full power, we had everything agreed on. The problem, the situation when Morocco became part of the bid, like everything in life, there were different visions. So some people thought, okay, they can have 2 stadiums. They would probably like more closer to 11. They claim that their population is closer to Spain than Portugal. So everybody has their arguments. And Morocco to request a number of stadiums. At the end, how we managed to do that, it was based on everything that I've been saying before. No, they knew we could not lose faith at home, because to identify the 11 stadiums of Spain, we initiated a process in 2021, I think it was, that we shared the information of the requirements using the 26 as a baseline, and we opened it to all the country with the government, as was asked for Geoff, so the government helped us in this process. And there were 15 candidates. And we already said that there would be 11, so we had a process. So for us, to reduce the number from 11 to whatever any other number would have been a suicide, political suicide. Portugal only had 3. They didn't have any other stadium that could reach the 40,000 minimum requirement. So that's 14. And then Morocco is the one that they negotiated with good hands, coming in 23. The moment they came, the Saudi bid that was looming around was out. So they came in at the right time, and they could come with a strong proposal of 6. And was accepted. It reached 20, which was allowed by FIFA. So that's how we ended in that moment. What we did not agree was exactly who's going to be the final game, opening game, etc., because I couldn't discuss this with anybody. I didn't have a president throughout most of this process. So from September onwards, I had an interim president. He was officially elected in April 2024, and he was suspended by the government in July after winning the Euros. So then I had interim president from July to December again. So there was nobody really at Spanish FA that could give me the institutional backing to go one way or the other. So as we knew, or I knew, that it was a lost battle to talk about these topics, we agreed to keep it open for the next stage and for FIFA to decide whether they will take these 20 stadiums or reduce it, and where the key games will take place.
Super interesting. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Anybody have a question for Jorge?
There is one. Just can you read it?
Yes. So, how was the process with some of the games going to South America?
So here it's more an opinion, because I can tell you how we discuss with with this CONMEBOL. This was like Cold War, or the big elephant in the room that they say in England, when the English speaking countries. CONMEBOL, they are our brothers, same language, culture, way of life, everything, and they were the closest federations to us. From me personally, while I was in FIFA, I worked a lot in CONMEBOL, 4 or 5 countries, so I knew people in the CONMEBOL Federation, etc., but also as countries. So we kind of never really talk about it. It was always, well, we'll see what happens. Oh, man, maybe you can think of 2034, but it's the Centenario. Well, we'll see. Now, the reality is, to FIFA issuing the regulations, what they should have said was that they invited federations from CONMEBOL, Europe, UEFA, CAF, and OFC to bid for 2030. That's what it was expected and what they should have done. But it was tough for CONMEBOL, because they could never beat us in an open bid. There was no chance. We would have voted, and they have 10 votes. Europe, Africa, 110 by ourselves. We had the support of CONCACAF, so it would be a slaughter. So in the end, and this was not our handling, I think it was more at the highest levels with FIFA, CONMEBOL directly, they found a way, or they tried to find a way, for CONMEBOL not to lose face, and at the end still celebrate the 30th centenary of the World Cup, which I think it's nice, and not, and that is have their space. Now, when we knew about this, we found out pretty much the last moment. It was a bit messy. Then it's not that crazy as it can seem, because the idea behind it is that those 3 countries would, in any case, fly from their countries. So you only have 3 countries that are going to be penalized, the ones that play in Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay, that they will need to fly there and then back to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. And it's 3 games that they will be played before the opening game, as it happens in the Olympics, that there is one day is the opening, and before that, there is some competitions already. So these games, the Uruguay game is not the opening game. It's the celebrations of the centenary. And so are the other 2 South America games. It's a bit complex, I know, and it costs us a lot to explain here, but that's the outcome of all this.
It's also interesting as well, because what you just said there about, because obviously one of the things is that this represented a shift away after we saw the votes for the World Cup in Russia and Qatar going back to 2012. There was that move away from the decision being made by the FIFA exec committee, because obviously they can be influenced, etc. Allegations of corruption there. So it goes to FIFA Congress. But as you said there, South America, there was no nation that would have been able to win the vote against you guys, because they just wouldn't have the votes in Congress. If you've got the African bloc, you've got the European bloc. So I guess, it's a very political question, but, football is political, and particularly world football and FIFA. But do you think that moving away from the exec committee to the Congress making the decision is a good one, but are there still issues around that, for example? And obviously, I don't want you to say anything that is potentially going. Yeah,
I'm not working at the Spanish FIFA anymore, Geoff, so I can say whatever I want. No, I think it's great, but I'm completely against open vote. For me, it might sound contradicting, but I think it's the biggest problem, because if your vote is public, then you can influence people more easily. The problem with closing vote is that if somebody is trying to influence in a bad way, you never know. You can try to influence, but in the end of the day, you never know. But if you are trying to influence whatever country it is, Vanuatu for that matter, and I can tell Vanuatu president, hey, if you support me, you will get whatever. I'm going to see if you're voting for me when it's transparent. So for me, despite it might sound the other way around, I'm completely against that. And that was one of our fears, the open vote. Because with the open vote, we believe it's way more easy to influence than it's not. And we've seen that in the Women's World Cup bid. A lot of my colleagues shared from the European federations that they had received a lot of support, but they could not vote for them because it's public. And if you are from a confederation different, so for South Americans would never vote for anybody, that was not them. But if AFC decided to support Brazil, all the members from AFC that do not support Brazil, they will have consequences. So for me, I'm completely in favor of the Congress, completely against public and open vote.
It's interesting. I guess there's no perfect solution to this, and there's always going to be challenges however you have the vote. I do want to make sure we keep to time, so we're coming to 5. So we've got 2 questions on the chat. So one from Sid. He says, just a quick question. Do you believe multi-nation World Cups will become the new normal, or was this bid a unique alignment of opportunities?
Sure. With the requirements, it's very hard. And I'm sure some of you have seen the Saudi bid. We will see what happens, because the stadiums that they are rejecting, I don't believe they will make them. And at the end, it's too many games. Now it moved from the traditional that we all know of 32 countries. Now it's 48, from 62 games to 104. I don't see there is a country except possibly the US, and we'll see about Saudi that can do it. And I see it as a positive, and having gone through that, I think it's super enriching and super positive. And I think it will be the case furthermore. In fact, it is the case. There is one bid with the US, Jamaica, and some other countries for 31 World Cup, I think, and then 35, the home nations as well. So it's going to be the norm for sure.
Thank you for that question, Sid. That opens up another debate, which we won't go into here, about environmental sustainability, more games, more travel across countries, more air travel for fans, etc. But anyway, we don't have to open that up today. Final question from Kelly. Thanks, Kelly. She's traveling on the train, so she's maybe dipping in and out. But she said, how is Spain planning to ensure that the legacy of the World Cup goes beyond infrastructure and tourism? So, for example, embedding long-term social impact across communities, and what governance structures are being put in place now to make that legacy measurable and accountable over time?
Well, I'll begin by saying, I didn't say it before, but normally when somebody's leading a project like this, they either get a promotion or a bonus. In my case, I got the sack. So I'm not part of the Spanish FA. We won the bid in 11th of December, and I was fired on the 28th. In the middle, there were elections of a new president and everything that goes with that. So I don't know. Well, I do know. The answer is nothing. To my knowledge, there is nothing being done at the moment.
So I mean that's an interesting one, because we obviously here in the UK we had the London Olympics in 2012, and there was a lot of talk of legacy, and you could argue that we didn't capitalize on hosting the Olympics particularly well. Yes, maybe in terms of the redevelopment and regeneration of that part, but outside of that, has the country really benefited? And it comes down to what Kelly's asked around governance structures as well, and making sure you've got that in place. But just so second question, I know you said that they were obviously doing presidential elections, but why, after being so successful in terms of getting the games, why then were you let go, and were there other members in the team let go as well, Jorge?
Unfortunately, because of that. Yeah. We know how this game works. Sometimes good, sometimes not that good. Yeah. Well, at least until reaching this point, that they cannot take it away.
Yeah. And so, just as a final question, then, so what is it that you're working on, or where are you working now, Jorge?
By myself, I'm advising, consultancy, investing in Spanish football. So anybody who wants to approach me on those topics, I'm happy to discuss.
Fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much, Jorge. Really appreciate you giving up the time to give the webinar, to obviously prepare the webinar, to tell us about the story and the experience, because I think it's very interesting when we look back at that, and let's hope in 2030 it's going to be a successful World Cup, which I'm sure it probably will. Thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. We're going to be hosting another one of these on Monday, the 1st of December. So I think the invite has gone round, but I'll make sure that we send that around again. We're going to be welcoming Alex Alcantara. He was a graduate from 2023, currently a director of partnerships at 160 over 90 in Dubai, and he's going to be talking about opportunities in ticketing, in guest communications, in sports marketing agencies. So hopefully we'll see a few of you on the 1st of December. But yeah, let me just say thank you once again, Jorge, and yeah, we will catch up soon, no doubt. Thank you,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Thank you, guys. All the best. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.